Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you doing today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Please, please, please let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, pause now, go watch it, and then come back and vote. Yesterday I asked you to vote on what kind of content you would like to see more from me. This is going to continue, but I want to add. I either want to do videos of me making stuff or general shop projects, or I want to make videos about games. Go vote. Currently, the overwhelming response has been making things, which is fine. I'm leaning towards that myself. But today I want to talk about games, and not because I'm trying to sway the voting or anything, but because I've been playing a couple of games lately, and it something that I might have told you before or might not, and that is that I am a huge, huge, huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft. I bought these books when I was a teen, or, well, whenever they became available. When were these printed? I feel like I was a teen. They might have been... I don't know when these were printed. But they're yellow and old. I've had these books for a very long time because I've always been a huge fan of Lovecraft. And if you don't know who H.P. Lovecraft is, he was an author who wrote kind of pulpy detective stories in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I don't know when he actually lived. But the books are usually set around the 20s, and they're kind of psychological horror. And what I mean by that is he developed this mythos, the world of Cthulhu, and the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft, where there was this ancient book called Necronomicon, which was covered in human skin, and there's these cults that are trying to summon these old gods from alternate dimensions to, into our world, and madness plays a huge part in his writings. People going crazy, just seeing things that are so horrific it drives them crazy, and so loved almost everything he's ever written. I mean, there's obviously things that some of these stories are pretty bad. Not bad, but just not great. But because of that, I've always been partial to anything Call of Cthulhu related or Lovecraft or Mythos related. And I used to play the Call of Cthulhu card game. I don't know if you knew this, but I was a competitive card game player for a long part of my life. I played a lot of Magic and Star Wars and whatever. And the Call of Cthulhu card game, I was 4th place in the world. So I loved it. But lately, a couple of games on the Switch have caught my eye because they're Lovecraft themed. Well, one of them is literally called the Call of Cthulhu, so I bought both of them. One is the Call of Cthulhu, and the other one is the Sinking City. Now, I couldn't record gameplay on my Switch for either of these, so hopefully I can find some images or something to show you while I talk about them. And the reason I want to talk about them is because, the problem with this genre is it's not wildly popular. And so anytime there's a new movie or game set in this world, it's usually really low budget. And that rings true for both of these games, but that doesn't mean they're not awesome. And that's the thing. There's a lot of movies that have leaned on the Lovecraft mythos and have tried to do something with it and have just failed. Probably my favorite ever is The Ninth Gate. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's very Lovecraft themed. But these two games, one is the Call of Cthulhu, which was actually based on the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game that came out, I don't know, in the 80s or 90s, and was partially funded, or maybe even fully funded, by the publisher of that role-playing game. And for a video game, it's very linear. It's very kind of just go down the path. There's not a whole lot of detectiving going on. Like, it's not difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do. It's a little bit point-and-click adventure, but in 3D. And there is some combat and a few jump scares. But I think the thing that, when I first fired up the game, I was like, oh, God. This is so ugly. Like, it's very low budget in a sense that it just looks like a game from the late 90s, early 2000s, like PlayStation 1 or 2 era graphics. It's really bad. But the game itself was really rewarding. The story was excellent. The writing was great. The voice work was good. I'm not going to say it was great. It could have been a lot better, but it was good. And overall, I really enjoyed the experience of playing that game. And in fact, she watched me play the entire game and kind of helped me make decisions because it's very short. It's like maybe 8 hours or something. Like, it doesn't take very long to finish the game. My first response when I saw it was like, this is hideous. But as I played it, I really fell in love with it, and it turned out to be a really good experience. So when I got done with that, number one, I dug out all my H.P. Lovecraft books because I haven't read these in a very long time. And number two, I found The Sinking City. The Sinking City was published in like 2018 or 2019, I think 2019, by Frogwares. Frogwares did a series of Sherlock Holmes games, and they are like a Eastern Bloc, Czech Republic or Ukrainian or something like that, publisher, and they are completely independent, and they do games based on IP that's, public domain, like Lovecraft, and now, I meant like Sherlock Holmes, and now Lovecraft. And so the story of The Sinking City is the city that's kind of in Massachusetts, as they all are, kind of falling into ruin, and then there's the Innsmouthers and the Throgmortons, which are kind of like the H.P. Lovecraft had these hybrids, like human-ape hybrids, human-fish hybrids are the Innsmouthers. And so those two kind of factions are tearing up the city after this massive flood, and a whole bunch of monsters show up. So as far as the Cthulhu feel goes, it's got it. It's a little heavy-handed because right in the beginning you're like encountering craziness. Whereas in HP's stories, usually you don't encounter the crazy creatures until later in the story. You're kind of questioning whether reality is broken or not. In the video game, it's right up front. You're encountering really weird stuff, and there's no question that it's going on. In Lovecraft's writing, a lot of times the narrator or the person that you're empathizing with doesn't know whether what they're seeing is real, and so there's question about, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? In this game, there's very little of that, other than if you run into a location and you draw monsters out from that location and you start shooting at them, the cops will attack you, as if they're not seeing the same thing you're seeing. So that's the only way to kind of break that down and make it feel like that Lovecraft style. But the cool thing about this game is, one, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look great. I mean, it's an independent game. They did a very good job on Unreal Engine making it look good. But it is a little rough. It's not going to live up to modern, super AAA titles as visually. But the story is wonderful, and it's an open world game. So there's just this big city that you travel around and you solve cases, and you have to solve these cases. You'll sometimes have to go to the hospital and look up patient records, or go to the newspaper and look up advertisements, or go to the police station and look up citizen records and find addresses. There's no addresses in this game. There's just streets, and so they'll be like, you got to go to this corner here. And the thing that's really cool about it is the game doesn't give you anything. Like, you're just thrown into the game. Good luck figuring this one out. And there is like a very basic how to play kind of, like, you can step through that and read that, but it's very basic, and it doesn't explain the mechanics very well at all. And that's completely intentional, I believe. And when it comes to solving cases, you get a notice that says, such and such lives at this house on this street between these two streets, or at the corner of this and this. It doesn't give you a marker on the map. You have to go find that yourself. Like, where is that at? I have no idea. And once you've played for some hours, you'll start to get a hang of where things are in the city. But it's a big city, and I still don't. Been playing it for probably 20 hours, and I still don't know all the street names. But it's actually a very impressive game, and I'm really looking forward to see what Frogwares comes up with next. I hope they continue to publish games in the Mythos setting. They've done, I don't know, a half dozen games in the Sherlock setting, so I'd love to see more Mythos stuff from them, because it's been very gripping. It started off a little weird. The combat is bad to begin with, like frustratingly bad. But it's also kind of it fits, right? Like your character is seeing something it's never seen before that shouldn't exist in this world, and it's difficult to combat. And the reason that the combat is bad is just there's no auto aim, there's no aim assist. You're just kind of jerking it and try. And some of the creatures are pretty jumpy, and so it becomes very frustrating. Later in the game, I'm pretty comfortable with it now, but the detectiving part, you'll go into the locations and you'll uncover clues, and then you'll have to piece those clues together yourself. There's like a little board where you can do that, match things up, and it unlocks new things to go investigate. There's also, when you get to a crime scene and you'll see stages of the crime happening, you have to kind of put those in order in your brain so you can unlock new clues. It feels really good. And the thing that both of these games have that I absolutely love is the sanity concept. And what I mean by that is if you look at something that is disturbing, or if you see something, magical happen, it reduces your character's sanity, and it causes all kinds of like visual issues on the screen. It causes your character to almost become drunk. You're having a hard time controlling the character. It can cause audio hallucinations. It's really fun. And there was a game in the 90s or the early 2000s, on I think it was on the N64, the GameCube. I don't remember what it was called, but you were like a heiress to your grandfather's estate, and you have to go kind of figure out what happened to him by traveling through history. And there was a sanity thing in that game that did the same stuff, like to the point that it would seemingly shut the GameCube off, and you'd be like, "What's happened?" This feels like that. Like you start seeing stuff on the screen that you might start shooting at that isn't actually there. That's really fun. I really love that mechanic. So, if you're a fan of Lovecraft or a fan of Mythos, both of these games, I can recommend them. They both were or may still be on sale on the Switch right now. Sinking City, I would say, is probably my higher recommendation, but I definitely wouldn't discount Call of Cthulhu if you want story. Call of Cthulhu has a really good story, and it walks you through that story, so it's linear, but it kind of has to be in order to tell that rich story. Whereas the Sinking City tells stories through not so much narration and pacing, but through you reading clues that you found and kind of mapping stuff together. There you go. 2 games. Go try them. Let me know what you think. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and being amazing friends and wonderful people. I appreciate you, and I will see you tomorrow. The word today is apostasy. It is a noun meaning the act of abandoning, ignoring, or openly flaunting an accepted principle or belief. It was his idea of grand apostasy to drive to the Reformed synagogue on the high holidays and park his pink-eye nag among the luxurious whirl-wired touring cars of the rich. Saul Bellow, an American author. Apostasy. Apostasy.